Ghana's electricity sector dates back to the Gold Coast era, where electricity supply was mainly from diesel generators owned by industrial establishments, including factories and mines, as well as other institutions such as hospitals and schools. The sector was revolutionized with the completion of the Akosombo hydroelectric power station in 1965, which also saw the export of electricity to neighboring countries like Togo, Burkina Faso, and Benin. Electricity demand has since grown significantly to the point where supply is not enough to meet the demand, resulting in severe power crisis over the last decade. In a bid to solve the crisis, a power sector reform was implemented in the late 90s to open up the electricity market for private sector participation to help deal with the shortfall. Ghana committed to universal access to electricity as far back as 1989, when only 15 to 20% of the population had access to electricity. The National Electrification Scheme was established to oversee the implementation of the National Electrification Master Plan, which sought to extend electricity to every part of the country by the year 2020. Through programs like the Self-Help Electrification Program, the scheme has been able to extend electricity to about 82.5% of the population as at the end of 2016. Demand for electricity in Ghana has increased by over 52% over the last decade, thus between 2006 and 2016, while installed generation capacity has more than doubled over the same period. The current population of Ghana is a little over 30 million. In the past decade, the country has experienced severe power outages. This has to do with electricity supply challenges, which as of 2006 cost the country an average of $2.1 million loss in production daily. This situation appears to have been improved through installed generation capacity with the coming on board of major players like the independent power producers. Currently, there are 2 hydroelectric power stations and over 8 independent power producers. The 2 hydroelectric power stations are the Akosombo station and the Bui power station. For instance, as of 2006, the generation capacity was 1,730 megawatts. By 2016, it had increased to 3,795 megawatts. Currently, the Volta River Authority, which operates Akosombo Station and 5 other stations, generates 555.68 megawatts. The other stations, which are operated by VRA, have the following generation capacity. TAPCO generates 189.4 megawatts. PON generates 111.87 megawatts. The KTPP generates 98.96 megawatts. The TT2PP generates 18.92 megawatts. The TT1PP generates 0.33 megawatt, while Bui generates 1.04 megawatts. For the independent power producers, Asogli Power Plant generates 443.14 megawatts. Tika generates 333.98 megawatt. Car Power generates 319.96 megawatt. Amandi generates 194.18 megawatts. Sen Power generates 196.17 megawatts. Senate generates 107.10 megawatts, while Aska generates 14.76 megawatts. Ameri is in the process of being decommissioned, hence its inability to generate now. Bridge Power is yet to be fully operational. The Ghana Grid Company Limited, GRIDCO, which is mandated to transmit power, has been computing the generation capacities of the over 10 power stations.
There is enough generation to meet demand. As I said, we have about 5,000 installed. On a daily basis, you have more than 3,500 megawatts available. Some generators, but all in all, we have more generation available than what is being demanded. So there's no issue with generation. Okay. I told you that
Is it nationwide
in terms of
the generation and the distribution?
the generation is for the entire country. Okay, so there's no issue.
Not off at 400 megawatts, and in 2013, then we added a 4 megawatt small hydro plant to it. So the total became 204 404 megawatts at Bui installed capacity. But currently, because of the low reservoir water level, we are just running one of our plants to produce reactive power in the daytime, and another one comes back at peak to serve load.
It appears Ghana currently has enough power to distribute. So what are the reasons for the electricity supply challenges?
In the transmission today, we're able to see that we have some overloads in certain areas. We have poor voltages in certain parts of the country, especially Kumasi and its environs. So today we want to tell Ghanaians that we are doing something about it. Accra Tema alone accounts for almost 35 to 40% of entire Ghana's demand. So you have huge amounts of power flowing into this area. That is why we need to revamp the system.
What we are seeing now indicates that the transmission infrastructure is being overloaded, and that means that the demand is higher than the capacity of the transmission infrastructure to transmit power to ECG and for ECG to also distribute to our homes. To be able to deal with that, we need to invest in new infrastructure to improve on the capacity of the network, particularly those choked areas.
Other factors are overdependence on thermal and hydro sources for electricity generation and a poor tariff structure, which makes it difficult for utility companies to recover the cost of electricity production. But how do we address these challenges to alleviate the plight of consumers?
We are constructing more substations and more transmission lines to, one, remove these overloads and also create redundancies. What we mean by redundancy is that we want to enter a period whereby even if when one of our lines breaks down, like it happened on Saturday, the customer will not have impact because the others will be able to take up and support it. That is why we are building the lines from Tema to Accra. We are increasing the capacity of the transmission from about 400 to about 1,400, more than 3 times.
There are management problems where sometimes there's pressure for Bui to generate even when it doesn't have to generate technically. So that is the problem with Bui, and because it's also at the central part, it helps to stabilize the grid if it is on stream. But it doesn't mean that we cannot transmit power safely from Accra or Akosombo to Kumasi and to other places. If we have the robust transmission system, it is still possible to transmit power from the east to the middle part or from the west to the middle part of the country.
The country has been heavily dependent on hydro sources, mainly from the Akosombo Dam and Bui Power Station, which was completed in 2013 for electricity generation. This is because hydro sources are known to provide the cheapest source of electricity as compared to thermal and renewable energy sources. Solving Ghana's electricity challenges will require measures such as diversifying the country's energy mix.
We have started to develop solar projects, renewable energy. And we plan to put in about 150 by next year, 150 megawatt by next year. By tomorrow, by close of tomorrow, we energize about 25 megawatts solar onto the national grid. And by end of this month, early next month, we'll add another 25 to make it 50 megawatts. So that's what we are doing, so that when the water level goes down, we can also run our solar plants.
Consistently, we keep repeating this. We have to see the power sector as a system, all right? Understand the problems that are in the system and fix them concurrently. You can't fix generation before you come to transmission. And that's what we have done. We fixed generation, and now transmission has become the problem. If you fix transmission and their distribution or generation becomes the problem, you have to go and fix it. But we have to look at the system and say that these are the improvements we need to ensure that we have a robust power system that delivers power to the consumer without the fanfare and the terminologies and language around it. So that is really the struggle that government has to go through.